reputations for always being somewhere where mainstream media is not.
I mean, it really has, to me, has been an economic Hunger Games that's being depicted by corporate media that happens to take advertisements from companies like John Deere as the wealthiest country on earth, the American dream, work hard. Can you kind of talk about the disconnect you felt in these conditions working at John Deere while you were getting less and less, but it's depicted much differently?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it all. Look, corporate media controls the narrative, and that's what's fed to people every day.
Talk about the threat beyond you to people fighting these pipelines, this pollution, and this greed and evil.
What's happening to me is a new fossil fuel industry playbook.
You know, Joe Biden, proclaims to be the most pro-union president in history. Where's he at? Where's he talking now?
Joe Manchin has been the thorn in the side of West Virginians for decades.
We're just a number to them. We're as replaceable as a light bulb.
We are now over 7 years past this catastrophe in Flint, where residents, many of which are behind me, were poisoned.
Go all the way back to the media and they're not there for us. There's no one there for us. We're all here struggling and nothing's being done.
You're not talking about like residual scars from 6 years ago. You're talking about stuff you're getting now.
This is in the last 24 hours.
You know, I always talk about how to get away with murder. Ask Snyder, ask Nussel. They're all helping him do it.
She was very family oriented. She light up the room when she comes.
Oh, and they wanted to get rid of her pension.
Oh,
so yeah. So like all the senior nurses, not only are they're not getting the wage, their pension is being frozen.
You're currently homeless, working at Amazon?
Currently am, yeah. I have been homeless for the past, 2.5, almost 3 years that I've been here now. And I haven't been able to afford a place.
This whole sordid, crappy affair is completely illegal.
Hey, yo, stop it!
Unmask them! Unmask them!
Fuck you!
Unmask them!
Literally private property all over the fence, even though I believe we're on a public sidewalk. So in Amazon's world, it's private property.
Our elected officials, both of mine, Shelley Moore Capito and Joe Manchin, has just like always, like they did with the minimum wage raise, ripped the people out.
Corporatist politicians like Nancy Pelosi are telling us we have to wait longer.
We are now living at a time where a generation must rise up, not out of anger, but out of survival.
I end up getting a call from work in March, and I was evicted.
I be wanting to snap, I be wanting to go crazy because it's destroying me and there's nothing else to do. But I hurt, I cry every night.
We're back to normal. Well, I'm going around and it seems like we're just back to the shitty normal that's only getting worse.
If back to normal means we're back to being underpaid, it means we're back to being worked like dogs, it means that they're back to harassing homeless people, you can keep your fucking normal.
She did not say, okay, I'm going to go to be a doctor, and this is something that I'm just going to have to do. I'm going to have to come in here and do this. She did not. She signed up to be a night sorter at Amazon. She had no business COVID testing.
Corporate media had us believing that we're just lucky to have a job. We're lucky. If you're still at a place that still offers insurance and you're not paying, you're lucky.
Seconds, it's not minutes that your time off task starts. They track you down to the second.
And the houses are pretty nice, pretty big over here, as opposed to the east side, which is fairly poor, less signs in general. But you can see vacant lots. I'm pretty sure the Flint Journal knows about it. Broke it in the Detroit Metro Times and The Intercept on Governor Rick Snyder's administration. Their phones were deleted right before the launch of a criminal investigation. Health officials' phones had no messages on them.
The governor refused to hand over key documents. I mean, to be honestly, I know you guys know about it. I don't know why you're not reporting it.
I will point out that all the officers here are white.
Joe Biden, you said that if we get you into office, we elect you into office, you got our back. You said, black community, I got your back.
I don't understand why they're here. I don't understand why they have to do all this because one of their people decided to kill somebody.
Fucking kidding?
Seriously? They can go home and tell their kids what they did.
Leave the area, guys.
All right, everybody's gotta
move. This is the perfect physical manifestation of why we need to defund the police.
But the right thing to do, the morally just thing to do, is to bring relief to people. And God knows that people all over this country are suffering. About 140 million people who live in poverty or poverty adjacent. And those people are black. Those people are brown. Those people are white. Those people are indigenous. Those people are Asian. Poverty touches all.
You know, it's amazing to me because we're seeing strikes happening all over the country is workers who have been, exploited and beaten down. They're kind of saying enough is enough. I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore.
I think what we're seeing across the country is even though some workers' wages are viewed as high, it's not really keeping up with the cost of living. And then they look at the corporate side of things where executives are making hundreds and hundreds of times what a line worker does.
They counted on people not being able to fight back. And we figured out a way through grit and struggle and tenacity and the support of so many people.
It seems to me there is some hope. I'm not saying this will overthrow the system tomorrow, but what do you think about, workers are kind of finally saying, well, what else do we have to lose?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is workers are becoming more informed, with sites like you, social media, people getting their message out, and just, the climate right now.
It's also bringing us closer together as a union, as a group of people.
It's the workers going out there and making this work. It's the old adage I used to tell when I would sit in on negotiations. I go and I trade my labor for a wage. You're not giving me nothing. I'm making that wage.
Listen, you can't unite with someone who don't want to unite with you. So you have to be willing to really fight and do what you need to do when you have the majority.
Not every day is going to be a good day, but the victories that we do have, we definitely amplify them.
Democrats have basically tried to straddle the line where they're more woke and not verbally as offensive as the Republicans, but their policies basically leave these same people to fend for themselves.
Same story, right? It's the same story every time. One's just one's read like a horror story and one's read like a fairy tale, depending on your eyes. But it's the same ending every time. We know how this book ends.
The struggle is what makes us stronger. I don't have a lifetime of government experience because I've worked actual jobs.
A type of liberation that transcends all understanding. That having universal health care is a type of understanding. Canceling student debt is a type of understanding.
How can a progressive combat that going forward to not be smeared out of the race?
I want progressives to be very resolute, and I want us to keep on running because we are winning. I raised $6 million in this race. I was outperforming every other candidate in this race until that dark money came in.
I'm telling you that the reason why your life is so crappy is because the person that you voted in, not thinking about it, has been ruining your quality of life. Let's talk about the things that actually matter.
We're trying to change the working conditions not only for Starbucks workers, but hopefully this leads to more people being able to say, enough is enough.
I admire your work, Jordan, on Flint water issue and so many other issues. And I just want to urge people listening to continue to support Status Coup.
There's Jordan Sheridan with Status Coup. Hope everybody's having an okay day, staying safe in these tough times. Obviously, COVID is still surging all over the country. Hospitalizations have increased throughout the country. Deaths, unfortunately, are starting to go up throughout the country. We had the major breaking news today that the Supreme Court has blocked President Biden's virus mandate for large employers. This is from the New York Times. The Supreme Court on Thursday blocked the Biden administration from enforcing a vaccine or testing mandate for large employers, dealing a blow to a key element of the White House's plan to address the pandemic, as cases resulting from the Omicron variant are on the rise. But the court allowed a more modest mandate requiring healthcare workers at facilities receiving federal money to be vaccinated. The vote in the employer mandate case was 6-3, with liberal justices in dissent. The vote in the healthcare case was 5-4, with Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Brett Kavanaugh joining the liberal justices to form a majority. That is a major decision by the Supreme Court. I'm not shocked at all. Frankly, putting aside the legality of it, businesses wanted the vaccine mandate. Let's not pretend they didn't. They were happy that Biden and the federal administration was mandating it, so they didn't have to mandate it, and they didn't have to become the boogeyman and draw the ire of people against vaccines, people who don't want to take the vaccines, this and that. So the fact that Biden had stepped in to put in a vaccine mandate for private employers of over 100 workers, I believe it was. That was something business wanted. It was kind of a wink deal, like you be the bad guy, the Biden administration. So the Supreme Court knocking it down. In this case, I don't know how in love business will be with that. As far as how this will affect COVID, listen, I'm not interested. I've kind of given up on debating anti-vaxxers, this and that. The data is pretty abundantly clear, and I think you could be anti-big pharma, anti-establishment, but also look at data and science. So for those that don't want to get vaccinated, that's your choice. But with that said, I think it's the wrong choice, by the way, based on the data, but it's your choice. But I shall say, with the vaccine mandate being knocked down, it remains to be seen, how does this affect all of the healthcare nurses that quit because they didn't want to get vaccinated, or other workers that quit in other industries because they didn't want to get vaccinated, or workers that were fired because there was a lot of workers in places like New York and elsewhere that were fired because they didn't want to get vaccinated. Does this mean they're going to get their jobs back, back pay? So there's a lot of details that really matter as far as how will this play out. The bottom line is, if you talk to medical experts, epidemiologists, the more people that are vaccinated, the less, it's not that the coronavirus won't have mutations, but the more people that are vaccinated, the less receptors for those mutations. But let's not forget the big piece here, vaccine mandate or not, President Biden's administration will not force Moderna or Pfizer to share their formula for the vaccines with the third world. So we can vaccinate 85% of America, but as you're seeing with the current Omicron variant, there's new variants forming that break through vaccinations. The vaccinations, by and large, are protecting people from hospitalization or death, those that are vaccinated, but it doesn't mean you can't get it. So even with the vaccine mandate being knocked down, the true thing is there's going to be more and more mutations if we don't bulk vaccinate the rest of the world, particularly the third world. And that is one of the biggest sins, in my opinion, of the Biden administration. And there's a whole lot of them. The fact that he's not doing anything to force these companies, who, by the way, benefited from government research and government funding of their vaccine studies and trials. They didn't just manufacture these vaccines and find the formula on their own. The government funded huge chunks of Moderna and Pfizer's vaccine studies, and ultimately them finding a formula. So the fact that we're not vaccinating the rest of the world, in my view, the more people vaccinated in America, the better. But we're seeing with Omicron, we could keep vaccinating people. It doesn't mean people aren't going to contract it, spread it. So it's twofold. On one end, there's obviously, there will be ripple effects with the vaccine mandate being stripped down. but there will also, until we do something to start bulk vaccinating the rest of the world, don't just think this is the last mutation. This one is more mild to the individual. It's not so much more mild to the hospital system that all over the country right now, hospitals are seeing massive spikes. I've talked to nurses and hospital workers that are telling me it's very similar to how it was at the worst periods in 2020 and 2021. So major decision by the Supreme Court, not shocked at all. We got a right-wing Supreme Court, and we'll continue covering the ripple effect because it will make a difference as far as do workers who were fired for not getting vaccinated get their jobs back? Do workers that quit have a ability to get their jobs back? And how will it play out? So we'll stay on that. Please, before we move on, smash that like button. It's a thumbs up button right under the video. The more people that press the like button, the more people that will see this stream. YouTube's algorithm, the more people that like, the more people that comment in the chat, the more people who leave super chats. It all really, really helps us. So please boost us by pressing the like button, sharing the stream, commenting in the chat, and we really appreciate your super chats too. I kind of wanted to turn to Marianne Williamson, who obviously was, I think, Oprah's spiritual advisor. That's how she kind of came onto the national scene. But she ran for president in 2020. The media, of course, mocked her. They kind of made her into a caricature. They didn't take her seriously. They honestly dismissed her progressive political proposals because she wasn't just like running as a spiritual author. She had legitimate policy proposals. And I thought she was impressive in debates. By the way, I was just on her podcast last week. So I believe me on her podcast as a guest will be out soon on her YouTube channel and wherever you could find the Marianne Williamson podcast. But I wanted to play a clip. She did an interview with Breaking Points that was released today with Crystal Ball and Sagar Anjadi. And they asked her, because there was a Politico piece that was kind of hinting that there's going to be a progressive challenger that primaries Biden in 2024. So they interviewed her and they, in addition to other things, asked her about it. I don't want to oversell it. She didn't hint that she's running or anything like that, but she also didn't knock it down. Let's play a clip when she was asked about whether she would consider running against Biden in 2024.
Obviously, there's a big Politico piece that floated you or Nina Turner as a potential primary opponent of Joe Biden. I know you're not going to haven't made decisions and not going to divulge anything here, but
I have to talk to you first.
I did want to ask you about what you think of that direction, whether you think, what a goal of such a primary effort should be and what you think is realistically possible there.
Well, I'm not enrolled in the idea that we should just assume that Biden will be running again.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean,
and nobody, and you know what? People in this town are not.
Exactly.
His own campaign manager.
Exactly. Exactly. And this is one of those other disconnects.
Yes.
They say in public, are you going to primary? In private, they're saying, well, obviously you're not running again.
Right.
So I think that there will be many, many voices. To me, the issue is not the who, but the what. And the what is someone who is standing within the electoral space for the kind of agenda that will really create the course correction, the terrible imbalance, social and economic imbalance of opportunity in this country between a very, very few people versus the vast majority of people. And what a danger that is, not only to individual lives, but to the state of our democracy and our future.
Interesting. Well, to be clear, I think she made important points. Number one, who knows if Biden's even running? I think that's kind of the untold secret in Washington. People don't really think he's going to run. I don't want to get into his health, but clearly it's very clear at times he does not look ready for prime time anymore. I said it throughout the campaign. He was forgetting Obama's name. He called himself an O'Biden-Bama Democrat. He clearly was not so strong, particularly as the day went on later. People have their reasons for this. I'm not a medical doctor, but the guy is, I think he's 78 or 79 at this point. So by 2024, he'd be in his early 80s if he ran again. So I think Marianne Williamson is making the point, it's kind of hard in 2022 to give you a real answer if I or another progressive would run as a primary challenger to him, because it could be an open it could be, technically, I don't know if it would be against him. I don't know if it would be against Vice President Kamala Harris. I don't know if they would throw Harris overboard. And it really is up in the air. And a lot of it, in my view, depends on how badly are Democrats going to be wiped out in November. A little later on in the show, I interviewed David Dayen, and the executive editor with the American Prospect. And we talked about how the Democrats and Biden, shockingly, are moving further and further to austerity politics as Biden's poll numbers sink down. So I think a lot of this has to do with how badly the Democrats get wiped out in November, which to me is all but certain at this point, a Republican wipeout, which is not a great thing. I'm not for either at this point, but let's not pretend Republicans taking over is just wonderful. But she didn't shoot it down either. When she says it's not really the who, it's the what. Yeah, true, but it's also the who. And I think Marianne Williamson, I don't want to oversell it. If she, let's say, were to run as a primary challenger to President Biden, it would be very difficult for her to win. Obviously Ted Kennedy unsuccessfully challenged Jimmy Carter in 1980. There's been other unsuccessful primary challenges. She would be a pariah like we've never seen. The corporate media crucifying her, the whole Democratic Party apparatus crucifying her if she dared to run. But I think her actual message, while in some ways has similarities to Bernie, is a little bit different than Bernie's. And I think if she ran, whether she would win or not, that's a whole nother story. But if she ran, I think her message would be popular in a Democratic primary. I think it would be popular nationally. But I think particularly in a Democratic Party, because I think there's a lot of Democrats that are growing more and more disenchanted, even the neoliberal Democrats who voted for Hillary, who voted for Obama, who voted for John Kerry, who voted for Biden, and who have subscribed to this whole, it's better than the Republicans, and who subscribe to that lesser of two evil mentality. I think even a considerable portion of those people are fed up. They did what they had to do to get rid of Trump. Biden wasn't their first choice, but they came through for him, particularly black voters, because Biden saw an increase in black voters in Atlanta. That's why he won Georgia. You saw an increase in black voters in Detroit. That was one of the major reasons he won Michigan. Saw an increase in black voters in Milwaukee. That's a major reason he won Wisconsin. Key states that he had to win, particularly Wisconsin and Michigan, which Trump won in 2016. So, I think a lot of those voters are seeing, what are we getting here? A $1,400 check? Chaos throughout a pandemic where Biden and his administration, with a full year on the job, we don't have testing. We don't have free masks, free testing, available tests, just this chaotic situation. We don't have a $15 minimum wage. He preemptively surrendered on that. He preemptively surrendered on the only real policy he ran on within the first 5 minutes of his presidency. You never hear about the public option, which he ran on and said, no, that's better than Medicare for all, Bernie. Police reform, gone. Even canceling $10,000 in student loan debt, which is a joke in itself. It needs to be a lot more than that. That's not happening. And he has refused to do anything to go on actual offense, like, let's say, a Lyndon B. Johnson would have back in the day, against Manchin and Sinema, because he doesn't actually passionately believe in any of these things. So to me, listen, would it be a tough thing for Marianne Williamson, Nina Turner, or anybody as a primary challenge to defeat Biden? Yeah, it would be a tough thing. I don't want to oversell it. But her message, I think she could potentially at least compete and rally a wide coalition in the Democratic Party that's just sick of the same old sicko, that's sick of the status quo. I want to play another clip from this. And remember, folks, please press that like button, share this stream. The more people that press the like button, the more people that share this stream, the more people that will end up seeing the stream. We really appreciate super chats. We could really use some help right now. As you see with YouTube, it's kind of tough sledding these days. So anything you could do for us in the super chat, we'd really appreciate it. I want to tell you we have a story coming out on Monday, a big story coming out on Monday. It's in a bigger outlet than Status Coup. It's on Flint. So please, if you can, support our investigative journalism, our on-the-ground reporting, even though at the moment, I'm not traveling because of the COVID surge. It's not like we've given up on investigative reporting, and we will be back on the ground as soon as it's safe enough to go on the ground. So please, if you can, statuscoup.com/join, become a member for as low as $5 a month. We're also going to have our monthly members only call in the next week or two. So that should be fun with our members. But I wanted to play this other clip because this is kind of the message I'm talking about that Marianne Williamson is pushing, that will she win a primary? I don't want to oversell it. That would be a very difficult thing to happen, but she could turn a lot of people and actually be competitive. I think this is a really, really strong message. Let's take a listen.
I found it really interesting when you went on Jesse Waters' show, Marianne, and you said that the real political divide, as Crystal said, is not left and right. And that's a cartoonish version of our political reality. And we're talking about powerful and powerlessness. Why is it that this statement does not seem to emanate whatsoever from the Biden administration? I mean, I think it's so central as to why he is so unpopular with the American public right now.
Because unfortunately, more than we even feared. The Democratic Party, at least the corporatist establishment, elite elements of it, seem to be as held hostage by corporate donors, whether it has to do with big insurance companies, big pharmaceutical companies, big agricultural companies, big chemical companies, big oil companies, and defense contractors, as the Republicans. I mean, we can argue, well, they're worse. But at this point, the fact that the Republicans are worse isn't enough, because that fact, the fact that this corporate aristocracy basically holds Washington hostage, means the way that has become the core value of the Republican Party, which represents a nosedive for our democracy. But the way the Democrats try to have it both ways represents a managed decline of our democracy.
Yeah.
Either way, it is the opposite of, once again, a government of the people, by the people, for the people. Government of the corporations, by the corporations, and for the corporations.
Managed decline. Managed decline. It's a good message. It's a good message. One might say, well, Jordan, she's going to run in the Democratic primary like Bernie, basically calling out the Democratic Party. Yeah, it's a fine line, because you're going to have your neoliberal establishment voters that like the Democratic Party. And, oh, she's not a real Democrat, this and that. But again, I really think things are shifting a lot, even from 2016 and 2020. Remember, Democratic Party voters were not necessarily voting for Joe Biden because they liked Joe Biden. They were captivated by Joe Biden. They thought his policies were wonderful. He didn't have any policies. They wanted to get rid of Trump. Well, Trump's gone. Trump's gone. We can't say the future. We don't know if he's going to run in 2024. If all things are equal, if he's healthy enough, I think he will. But for a Democratic Party primary, okay, Democrats might not feel in 2 years that Biden is their strongest chance to defeat, if it is Trump, or let's say a Ron DeSantis or a Trump mini-me in the Republican Party. They might not feel President Biden is the safest choice to beat Trump. They might not feel, if Biden doesn't run again and it's Kamala Harris, the vice president, who is about as popular as, I don't know, what's unpopular, is about as popular as homework right now. They might not feel she has a chance against Trump. So there might be somebody like a Marianne Williamson, who even in Democratic Party neoliberal voters, who her chord, the chord she's striking, managed decline, these kind of things, actually strikes a chord with them. They're actually willing to take a shot against Trump, because frankly, look at Biden's poll numbers. If they're at 33% now, 33% approval, what do you think they're going to be in a year when the Republicans control the House and the Senate? So I don't think it's out of the question. Again, I'm not going to lie to you that she would 100% have a chance to win, because primarying a sitting president is tough. If it's not Biden, and she would be primarying President Harris, which I cringe even saying, that's not a slam dunk. But again, I think her message that, it's not really the Democratic Party, first Republicans, it's the powerful versus the powerless, she says.
She takes on the Democratic Party straight up, aggressively. She talks about the corporate oligarchy. Similar things that Bernie said, but I think based on what I've seen from Marianne Williamson, she's willing to go a step or two further than Bernie Sanders was. And frankly, imagine there's so many deflated progressives, deflated progressives these days that want a candidate to go scorched earth against the Democratic Party. I've said on the local level, for example, Nina Turner's race, it isn't always the smartest thing because, for example, Nina Turner was running for the 11th district of Ohio, which is a very, very vote blue no matter who district, which is a very, very better than Republicans kind of area, majority black district, and they like the Democratic Party. So on a local level, it's not always the smartest thing to go scorched earth against the Democratic Party. On the national level, it's a whole different ballgame. And if you could craft a message that captivates people away from Democrats, Republicans, but it's just we're in a new Gilded Age and it's the oligarchy versus you, that could be a popular message. It could be a popular message. She could compete. Now, let's be clear. If Marianne Williamson decided to actually run a primary challenge against Biden or Harris, what they did to Bernie in 2016 and 2020, take that, probably times it, probably by 4 or 5. She would be America's most wanted in terms of the establishment. Oh my God, can you imagine? CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times editorial board, the Washington Post, they'd be telling her to drop out before she even announced she was running. They would be, they would be pushing her as a quack spiritual, hippy dippy commie. They would totally disregard her political positions. And it would probably be effective. I'm not going to lie to you. It would probably be effective. They would basically say she is Ralph Nader, only sounding a little hipper in terms of screwing the Democratic Party and helping the Republicans take the White House in 2024. That wouldn't be true, of course. In history, actual competitive primaries actually help whoever, if the primary challenger loses, it helps the sitting president in terms of being more competitive, unless you're Jimmy Carter, because he was obviously a terrible candidate. So it remains to be seen, but I'm interested in what happens. Obviously, if Marianne Williamson were to run a primary challenge, as long as I'm still breathing, I'd be out there covering it so you guys could see that, just like I did covering Bernie in 2016, Bernie in 2020. So I'm really interested to see, obviously she didn't oversell it. She didn't say she's running. She gave the caveats that we got to see what happens if Biden even runs, but she didn't knock it down either. So that's not a nothing. She could have knocked it down completely, but she didn't. So we'll see what happens. Remember to press that like button, share this stream, the like button, thumbs up right under the video. Sharing is caring, and we love those super chats coming in, all those good things. Again, before I air my interview with Dave Dayen, he is the executive editor with the American Prospect. I want to remind you, Status Coup is funded by you. There's a lot of outlets asking you to help them out. Cool. We need your help, and we need it significantly more because we have a lot bigger overhead because of our on-the-ground reporting. We want to get back on the ground as soon as possible. We also have an investigative story that I did with Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Charlie LaDuff. That's coming out as of now next week, and it's on the Flint water crisis and additional information on the cover-up, this time following the money. So that's coming out as of now next week in a pretty big outlet. I need you, even though I did it for The Guardian. I just gave it up. It's coming out in The Guardian. So I'm looking forward to that. But we need you. Even though we're not on the ground, I haven't stopped with the investigative reporting. We're trying to grow the team. We have some marketing help in the back end that we have to pay those people. So please, 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 if you can, support us. StatusCoup.com/join. StatusCoup.com/join. $5 a month. I wouldn't be bringing it up multiple times if we really didn't need your support. So thank you. And again, we're going to be doing our members only call. So when you become a member, we have a monthly Zoom call We're probably going to do that either next week or the week after. So stay tuned for that. Without further ado, I wanted to play my interview with Dave Dayen. He is the executive editor with the American Prospect, and he wrote a really interesting piece basically saying that the Democratic Party and Biden are on their way to austerity. I think they're already kind of there, but really, really interesting piece. Here's my conversation with Dave Dayen. Hey, it's Jordan. Delighted to be joined by Dave Dayen, executive editor of the American Prospect, which does great work on a lot of policy-oriented things. I wanted to have you on because I read a piece you had, which obviously right now the cable news, corporate media is kind of really focused on the filibuster fight, you know, Biden versus McConnell and all that stuff. Not to say the filibuster is not important and the fight to remove it is not important. But you wrote a piece that I think is really telling about the Democrats basically shifting already to austerity, which, you know, a lot of people might wonder, have they shifted to austerity or were they already kind of getting there towards the end of last year? The headline, Democratic inaction will lead back to austerity. It's pretty a long piece. I encourage people to read it at the American Prospect, but I wanted to read this part in particular. Talk without action, and not just on voting, has been how the Democrats have used the governing trifecta since March's passage of the American Rescue Plan. And it drives not only exhaustion, but bad policy. Despite a promising start that suggested Biden's administration had internalized the lessons of the Obama presidency and the pain of doing too little, there's been a slow motion pivot right back to that state of affairs, which heralds political disaster. Legislative paralysis is mostly to blame for this. There is no majority for the Democratic platform in Congress as long as the majority relies on Joe Manchin. But the bigger problem is that the perspective that better things aren't possible has begun to infect an executive branch with plenty of options to improve the situation. Witness the Biden administration official who responded to CNN's question about whether there should be additional relief measures during the Omicron variant spike by saying, no, there might be something small for restaurants, but the economy is booming. There are millions of open jobs, and we do not believe people should be sitting at home if they are vaccinated and boosted, as most adults are. It took all of 1 week for the aristocratic sounding response to become inoperative. House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer told reporters this week that the White House would be asking for substantial relief funding. So I bring that up. Everybody should read it at the American Prospect. I wanted to ask you, because I was struck actually when I read that CNN article where they said the economy's booming, because I don't know, I've traveled the country. There's apparently a different idea of booming, one for cable news journalists and, you know, influencers and like workers. So I wanted to ask you, what have you found from your reporting? Where are they getting that this economy is booming? And also you had mentioned that there are things that Biden can do, but this kind of inertia of, well, nothing big's possible at this point is setting in.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always this tension between wanting to tout your accomplishments and also, you know, dealing with the realities of the country. There is no doubt that we have experienced job increases that are the most of any president in the first year, that the unemployment rate is down to 3.9%, and that wages are rising, particularly at the low end of the scale. But the inflation situation is as such that most for the average person, real wages are falling. And that's never fun if you're someone out there and realizing that your paycheck doesn't go as far as it used to. And it's driving a lot of the issues around Biden's approval rating and perceptions of the economy. And so saying that the economy's booming, everybody go back to work, especially, you know, kind of almost ignoring the fact that we have these historic highs in COVID cases. This is causing major shortages around the country for labor. It's also causing shortages literally with store shelves and things like that. And the fact that the supply chain issues really have not been resolved, there are more ships waiting off the coast of where I'm at here in Los Angeles than ever before. You can't just go forward and say that well, statistically, if you look at certain aggregates in certain constrained circumstances, that we're doing just fine and everybody should get out and move forward with this glorious economy. It just misses stuff, and I think that it's almost being put forward as an excuse for the inaction that we're seeing in Congress.
And I also kind of want to ask, I mean, obviously you're a reporter, but just from a political perspective, you don't always win re-election if you don't get stuff done, but I would think you have kind of a better chance if you actually look like you're trying and look like you're fighting.
Right.
I don't expect anything from Joe Biden. The record is the record. He basically is a 1990s moderate Republican, decent on some social stuff, but economically he's right wing in my view. But if you look at how he ran on specific things that he pretty much preemptively surrendered on. $15 minimum wage. You don't hear about the public option anymore. Police reform is not really a thing anymore. Obviously, he's been dealing with a pandemic. But I wanted to ask you, I mean, what they're doing, which is this kind of lying in fetal position, trying to be diplomatic and nice with Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema, clearly not working. And there has been examples where if you pressure Manchin, he gets a little hot under the collar. I mean, when Bernie Sanders wrote an op-ed in a West Virginia newspaper, he didn't like that. Manchin can be pressured. I don't know if it would get his vote, but any inkling into why Biden won't be more aggressive and his administration won't be more aggressive towards Manchin, particularly on Build Back Better?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Build Back Better situation is pretty toxic right now. I think that Manchin clearly doesn't want to do it and is coming up with any excuse he possibly can to put that forward. I don't know exactly how salvageable it is. I mean, there's this theory that he offered just do what he wants and then we'll get something done. But what he wants changes from day to day and week to week. So I don't know if there's really a sweet spot there, but because kind of the entire agenda was put into that Build Back Better basket, it's like they don't have anything else that that's on the agenda. I mean, there's this push right now on voting rights, which it was very clear throughout this entire period that there aren't 60 votes for voting rights, and there aren't 50 votes to get rid of the filibuster. Kirsten Sinema just today went to the floor of the Senate and said, I'm not budging on the filibuster, which is the same thing that she said since January of 2021. So what was the point of this month that you've seemingly wasted now? It's one thing to sort of get credit for trying. Like you don't get everything you want, but you're showing your base that this is really important to you, and you're laying out the stakes of who's blocking progress. But usually the people blocking progress aren't in your own party, right? I mean, like, it's harder to make that argument when it's Democrats that are the obstacle. And clearly Sinema and Manchin are the obstacle with respect to changing the filibuster and getting voting rights done. And they're also, at least Manchin, the obstacle on getting the rest of the agenda done. So you gotta figure out something else to do. Now, I think that the primacy of the pandemic is something we shouldn't lose sight of. People are pissed off because they have to, navigate this thing again 2 years in. What Biden is doing around getting tests finally to people's mailboxes, getting masks. He just made an announcement about getting masks into people's hands. That's great, but the administration initially said no to both of those things and had to be prodded by public outcry to get to the right place. They could have got to the right place initially because it was very clear that we were going to need more non-pharmaceutical interventions to get us through this very transmissible portion of the disease.
But I should add, just to clarify, it's not clear to me. I mean, a report came out that those tests if you're insured, you could get reimbursed through insurance.
Right.
Once you go through all the rigmarole of filling out paperwork.
That's
so
insane.
It's not even clear to me that they are free.
Well, there's two separate things going on, right? So yes, there is this thing around insurance, which was their initial plan, which is insane. Like, you're going to save your receipts and go to your health insurance company for a $25 2-pack, and you're going to go through all the hassle of what you have to do to actually get your insurance to agree to something over $25. Like, no one's going to do that. It's ridiculous. It's like it's free in name only. The separate thing after the outcry is that they're going to mail them to your house. And that is, I believe, going to be free. It will not be a situation where you have to pay for them at all. So there are two separate things going on there, but they're cleaning up their own mistake, right? I mean, that's what they're doing. That's why the second thing was announced. And so, there's this seeming inability to react to this fast-moving event in a way that would show leadership. We ran a piece today about how Jeff Zients, who's the coronavirus response coordinator, is just not doing his job and probably should be fired.
And doesn't have any medical expertise, by the way.
No, he's a corporate guy. He was a CEO of a big conglomerate. And the only reason he's seen as competent in government is that he sat around and told contractors to fix healthcare.gov. And he's been living off that for like the last 10 years, even though he has shown no competency in any other respect. There's a real problem with being able to react to events. There's a problem with being able to forge an agenda out of the mess that's going on in the Senate. And yet there's this whole untapped resource of executive action where when it works, it really, really works. So a perfect example is, for the last 2 months, Biden and his team have been really talking very specifically about how concentration in the meat processing market, because there are 4 companies that control all meat processing, they are selling meat to grocery stores at a very high price, and we're seeing higher prices than ever for meat at the grocery store, but they're buying meat from ranchers in form of cattle and hogs at very low prices. And they're pocketing the exchange, right? And so the Biden administration has been talking about this and talking about this and talking about this. And yesterday we got the inflation numbers, and while the inflation numbers were still high, meat prices had gone down. And yes, the bully pulpit actually does matter. I mean, the fact that there was this spotlight on these 4 companies led these 4 companies, I mean, you can only assume, to say, okay, we're gonna back off for a bit. We're not going to take as many profits out of this crisis as we have been doing, and the result is lower prices for consumers. So I think that there's more of that can be done and that needs to be done.
And let me ask you, because the American Prospect, which again, people should check you guys out. You do great work. You wrote out a whole list of executive actions he could take, which, put aside whatever, he's a institutionalist and an old timer with the Senate. Okay, well, seems like he's coming around on the filibuster, even though he's not going on aggressive offense against Manchin or Sinema. But can you kind of talk about the executive actions he could take, and why do you think he's not taking it? Because in my view, my very simple view of politics, we live in the United Corporations of America, and they're doing what the donors will allow them to do. Because I don't believe the donors in either party want to open the spigot of consistent stimulus, pandemic or not, because that sets expectations and that shows, oh, wait, we can afford these things. So can you kind of talk about what are the top executive actions that he could do if he wants? How would they improve people's situation, and why do you think he's not?
There's a bevy of executive actions. Biden's taken some, but mostly those are of the kind that were either reversing Trump things or doing things that don't actually affect that United Corporations of America kind of side of it. So some of the biggest actions that we've heard about for a while are cancellation of student debt. We have this huge student debt crisis, a lot of defaults. They've been paused for 2 years. No one's had a problem with that. In fact, it's been really good for graduates who haven't had that burden of $400 a month on average. But it's supposed to start up again in May. And the Secretary of Education has the authority to change the terms of those loan contracts, including by canceling them entirely. And this is something that activists have asked for the last year and a half, and Biden has been resistant to it. Another example is action on drug prices. So prescription drug prices, there are ways, those patents are granted by the United States of America, right? We say you have exclusive ability to market this particular life-saving drug for 20 years, even though we, the people, the taxpayers, paid for the research and development to get you to be able to have that drug. You go ahead, private drug company, you profit from it for 20 years. We could change the terms of those patents. There are ways to use what are called march-in rights. If the drug was developed with federal support, you can go in and say it's not being given on reasonable terms to the consumer, in other words, affordably, and you can take those patents and give them to someone who will sell them affordably. There are options on making, removing descheduling is what they call it, descheduling marijuana from the list of controlled substances so that it is not any longer essentially an illegal drug. And that would open up not only the ability for people who are, suffering from a very disproportionately Black and Latino set of drug crimes. It would also allow the business that has gone up around legalized marijuana in various states to use federally chartered banks, for example, and to allow their businesses to not be done entirely in cash, and to regularize that business so that it's not more attractive to go to the pusher on the street. So those are just a few examples. And I think there are many, many more. You can go to, we actually have an executive action tracker at our website, prospect.org/EAT or EAT. There's a host of climate actions. There's a host of financial actions. There's things like starting a public credit registry so we're not reliant on the credit bureaus. There are a whole host of things, and they're all listed there.
Mm-hmm. And my last question for this, because your piece talks about austerity. I mean, at the end of the day, if you go back to Obama, experts have said, I believe, his stimulus in 2009-10 was insufficient. Mm-hmm. He ran on, parting the seas. He ran very progressive, ended up, providing a Republican healthcare plan. He got through in 2012, weak candidate, he got some breaks. But Trump, part of why Trump won was because a lot of people, 10% of Obama voters switched over to Trump. Hillary Clinton, I mean, there was depressed turnout among Black voters in some of the key areas. So I just see kind of a similar playbook here where, yes, it's different. Democrats only have this 50-50, majority. But at the same time, kind of negotiating against themselves on so many things. Mm-hmm. Obama, in Obama's case, chose to be civil with the Republicans, try and negotiate with them. Biden's doing the same thing, only with the Republicans in the Democratic Party. Manchin and Sinema. It's not all Manchin and Sinema, we should say, because I think there's several others
that hiding behind them.
Hiding behind them, and mm-hmm. Manchin and Sinema are taking the arrows. But I just want to ask you about the parallels, because it seems to me, I mean, hey, I'm no fan of the Democratic Party, but I also, a Republican tidal wave is not optimal either. But it seems to me Biden is basically, after the original nauseating onslaught of Biden is FDR articles, he is basically, it just looks like he's folding the tent and giving away his power to Manchin, Sinema. And when I say going on offense, can you imagine Lyndon B. Johnson? I mean, he was terrible on other things. Vietnam, he would not allow Joe Manchin or Kirsten Sinema to cripple his presidency. Correct. It just seems like there is no will to aggressively go on offense. I'm talking publicly shaming, tarring and feathering, because I think that's your best bet, is to publicly galvanize the working class and Americans against these two senators and see if they'll continue to hold it up.
Well, it is kind of amazing that Biden did a speech in Georgia this week on voting rights, and it took all of 24 hours for Sinema to go on the floor of the Senate and say nothing of what Joe Biden said moved me at all. I don't think there's a lot of fear of Joe Biden the way that there might have been of Lyndon Johnson. But here's what is amazing.
For a reason, because he doesn't actually do anything.
I mean, the proof is in the pudding, absolutely. So, but here is the amazing parallel. So. The Obama stimulus was, as you said, too inadequate. By the middle of 2010, if you look at fiscal policy's contribution to economic growth, it turned negative. It started taking away from growth at the end in the second quarter of 2010. So within a year and a half of Obama's presidency. And we saw the effects of that, a very slow recovery and a wipeout in 2010 at the polls. When Biden got in, he was determined not to do that. And the Democrats were talking about it actually very directly, almost for the first time, what Obama did was wrong. We are going to actually give the economy what it needs at this time of economic stress. And so they passed the American Rescue Plan. Well, almost nothing has happened since then, except for the infrastructure bill, which is very long term. And here we are. There's data that, the same data that we saw in terms of fiscal policy and growth in 2010. It shows now that in the last quarter of 2021, fiscal policy was about even. And by this quarter, one quarter before when Obama's turned negative, it's going to turn negative this quarter. So for all the talk that we learned the lessons of a too small stimulus, and we learned the lessons of low public investment, which is what Build Back Better was going to be, a sustained public investment, whether through the child tax credit or for assistance for things like childcare or elder care or paid family leave, et cetera. We learned the lessons. We're not going to do that anymore. We're actually going to bolster public investment, and we're going to continue to support working families where necessary. Well, guess what? We're not. We went right back into that position. And I think legislative paralysis is what it mostly has to do with. And yes, you're right to say that Obama was dealing with 60 votes in the Senate, whereas Manchin and Sinema are on the cusp of a 50 vote Democratic Senate. So much harder to get that agenda forward. However, the numbers are the numbers, and there was this sort of collective promise that we're not going to make the same mistake again, and we're making the same mistake again.
And I'll also point out, I mean, just from a 360-degree level, still don't have a $15 minimum wage. Right. So the federal minimum wage is $7.25. If you got a $15 minimum wage today, it's staggered over 5 years.
Right.
And frankly, with inflation right now, which is more and more evidence coming out that a huge chunk of that inflation is just good old price gouging, not companies passing off increased costs, but just as Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell said yesterday, they're increasing because they can. So you basically have people still making starvation wages with prices going up. That does not bode well politically, I would say, for the Democratic Party.
And, we've heard a lot of talk about how parties need to say popular things. There's this whole concept of popularism, that they need to say things that align with what the voters want, and that's going to get them through. And I really think it's more about deliverism, like that you have to deliver on these promises, or else you can keep making the promises, but no one's going to believe you. And that's where the Democratic Party really is. And it's a long-term process that they've gotten there over, broken promises for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And so at this point, there's no other option but to deliver and to prove that government can work and that Democrats are on the side of working families. And this is what they're sacrificing by a months-long protracted debate around Build Back Better that ultimately is seemingly leading to nothing.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dave Dayen, executive editor with the American Prospect. People could check out Democratic Inaction Will Lead Us Back to Austerity, which is his new piece at the American Prospect. You know, there's a lot of, shall we say, fluff out there these days on the interweb, on YouTube. American Prospect is one of the sites I read because you actually could get smarter, which I still care about and you should care about. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks a lot, Jordan.
Take care. So that was Dave Dayen with the American Prospect. And, you know, frankly, keeping it real, folks, for keeping it real, you know, his headline, let me show it one more time, said, Democratic inaction will lead us back to austerity. I kind of, I agree with his reporting. You should definitely read the piece. But the truth is, we're not being led back to austerity. It's still in austerity. Tell me when we were out of austerity. What the Democratic Party offered was a $1,400 check. A $1,400 check. Okay? An extension of the child tax credit that they allowed to expire in a year. Remember all the talk and hubbubaloo? We've cut child poverty in half. Yeah, there wasn't a lot of talk. Why the hell do we have such severe child poverty in this country? You know, it's just incredible. No $2,000 checks a month, which is what Biden promised, what those Georgia candidates promised, Ossoff and Warnock. He has totally abandoned a $15 minimum wage, which, by the way, you're going to see a lot more homelessness because people cannot afford the people making $9 an hour, $10 an hour, $11 an hour. Frankly, it's even really, really stretching it to even live on $15 an hour in most American cities, definitely urban areas. So he abandoned the $15 minimum wage, abandoned a public option, which was not enough anyway, police reform. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Any removal or canceling of student loan debt, even $10,000. Why? United Corporations of America. He's doing what the donors will allow. Because let's not forget, folks, let's not forget, the Democratic Party, while they're trying to get things done, they also are, one of the top thoughts in their mind is fundraising. The DCCC, the DNC is fundraising for the midterms, Senate campaigns, House campaigns, governors, etc. Well, who's giving them money? It's not you and I. It's super PACs. It's corporate CEOs, big pharma, big oil, military industrial complex, big banks. You think they want all these provisions in Build Back Better? Seriously, you think the very people that the Democratic Party is trying to fundraise from right now so that they compete and keep the House, keep the Senate, you think they actually want these things? No, they're lobbying against these things. You're talking hundreds of millions of dollars have been lobbied collectively across industry against Build Back Better, which, by the way, Build Back Better at $3.5 trillion, frankly, was the compromise position. $3.5 trillion was the compromise position. That wasn't enough. The $500 or $600 billion to go towards climate change, that's not enough. Experts say you need trillions of dollars to stave off the worst effects of the climate catastrophe. So it's just unbelievable. It's truly unbelievable. And, yeah, the Democrats will get what they deserve. The Democrats will get what they deserve in November. And frankly, I'm not completely blaming elected progressives, but elected progressives helped this happen by giving up their leverage. You know, you had those 6 squad members that voted no against the infrastructure deal. They held firm, but Pramila Jayapal, Ro Khanna, other members of the progressive caucus in Congress, where, you know, it's like 100 members, some of them are actually progressive, but they gave away the store. They said, yeah, we'll vote for the infrastructure deal because we trust Biden. to deliver Manchin and Sinema's votes on Build Back Better. Well, yeah, trust Biden, who has been in fetal position for most of the year in the face of President Manchin and co-president Sinema, who has refused to go on offense. And you want to know what the truth is? He won't go on offense. He doesn't want to, because he's not truly passionate about any of these provisions. All Biden cares about, make a deal. If that deal is just a grand coupon for the American people to Denny's, hey, we struck a deal. So that's where we're at. I want to thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys. Thanks, Dave Dayen, for coming on. Please, a quick reminder. You know, right now we're not on the ground, obviously, with Omicron and COVID surging. I'm not really in love with trying to get COVID twice, so I've limited my travel during this surge. We want to get back on the ground once it's a little safer. We need to grow. We need to grow. As you see, it's been tough on YouTube. YouTube has been really throttling us. Our content's not really getting out there as much. So we need to grow so we could fund the on-the-ground reporting. So please consider signing up as a Status Coup member, statuscoup.com/join, statuscoup.com/join. You could become a member for as low as $5 a month. That's statuscoup.com/join. You'll get access to our monthly members call, which we'll probably be doing in the next week or two. That's through Zoom. It's myself, our members. It's always a lot of fun. Access to behind the scenes video content, access to our members only Discord. So there's a lot of great perks as a member. And most importantly, you fund actual on the ground reporting, investigative reporting. I actually have a new piece coming out on Monday. I won't say where, but in a fairly big outlet on the Flint water crisis and cover up. So stay tuned for that. That's coming out next week. I've been working on that for a few months. So please, all of this costs a lot of money. Statuscoup.com/join. $5 a month. I would really appreciate you guys chipping in so we could support this reporting. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.